It is a very important lecture on the Sabbath. Why Sabbath is important, and the two different statements of the fourth commandment, which is Sabbath. Exodus 20, verse 8 to 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, made it holy. God made the seventh day holy. That is the first seven. That's the first week of creation. That's the first week of human history, the cosmos history. Okay, and God, for the first 6 days, God created heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. And therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. There's a first appearance of Sabbath, actually the mandate of Sabbath, take a rest. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12 to 15 says, you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there from there with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. So you see, there are two therefores. First, it's because God created 6 days and rest the seventh day. Okay? And therefore, you should rest on the seventh day first. Second is that because God redeemed you, took you out of Egypt with a mighty hand, therefore you keep the Sabbath. Therefore, Sabbath keeping is not just for rest. Sabbath keeping is also for redemption. You know, this is really, really important. So the 6 days thing is called creation ordinance. And Deuteronomy 5 is about redemption ordinance. It's really powerful. The two major reasons for carrying on Sabbath observance. First is creation. Second is redemption. Now, creation, Exodus 20, verse 11, we read that, right? Sabbath rest reflects the pattern of God's creative work, okay? Now, on the redemption, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15, and Exodus 20, verse 2 sets a tone for the Decalogue. Okay, Exodus 20, verse 2. I'm the Lord who brought you out of the land of slavery. Remind people that they are delivered from slavery. I took them out of slavery. Exodus 20, verse 2, right? Exodus 20, verse 2. Let's take a look at that. 20, verse 2. Okay. So this Exodus, the Deuteronomy, is the Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15. Okay, that is about the redemption now. Okay, this is a very powerful one, usually missed out by people. Okay, 5:12 actually, 5:12. You see, observe the Sabbath to keep it holy. 6 days you shall do this and this and that. And then it speaks back to that redemption, 5:12. Observe the Lord commanded you, okay? But before, in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 6, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so first is taking you out of the land of Egypt. We read the 5:12 to 15, right? I took you out of the land, therefore you respect me, you honor me by taking Sabbath. Interesting. So there is a Sabbath rest reminds people of their deliverance from toil and oppression. So when we celebrate Sabbath, we are reminded Sabbath rest, which is Sunday for us, is a day to remember that we've been delivered from a bondage of slavery and more dominion and bondage of sin in our lives. So there's redemption purpose. So Sabbath really for worship, and rest. Rest first, like Calvin and all these guys saying it first. Primarily is for worship, for remembering and honoring and thankful to God. So rest is a part of it. Rest, we are commanded to rest in order to worship. Like God rested on the seventh day. So redemption here is understood primarily in terms of the final rest of God's people. Exodus 20, verse 2, I'm the Lord who brought you out of the land of slavery. Remind people that they're delivered from slavery. Exodus is typological of God's people from death to sin, okay, to death to life. The final rest of God's people. 2 Corinthians chapter 20, Christ our Passover was sacrificed. Sabbath points us backwards to creation and also to the work of redemption of Christ on the cross. And their Sabbath points forward to a final rest, eternal rest. That's an eschatological aspect of Sabbath. That's so beautiful. So every time we celebrate Sabbath, we look backwards to creation and to Jesus died on the cross 2,000 years ago and resurrected. And then at the same time, Sabbath also looks forward to our eternal rest. When Jesus came, the world will be consummated and it'll begin our eternal rest in God. So Sabbath is right in the middle of it, between the two. Is continually pointing us backwards and forwards. Okay, it's memorial, it's anticipatory aspect of it. Anticipate points back to creation and the cross, and then points us back forward to eternal rest. Both drives us to worship. Okay, so this is very, very important. Why the two motivations for observing Sabbath?